The legend says that, in ancient times, a powerful patriarch locked his strength in a magical fruit, promising unmatched power to the winner of a great challenge. What no one knew, however, is that these stories were not just fairy tales. They were the key to a world filled with epic battles and unimaginable dangers. While martial arts dominate the lives of many, a lonely boy seeks to unravel the mysteries of this world, training day and night in search of power and respect. His name is Zeke. This kid is known for his fierce determination and for never giving up, even when everything seems impossible. He wants to be the best, man, but the journey is not easy. Every step is a struggle against the challenges life throws at him. And when he comes across a reference to the ancient and legendary golden fruit, a new flame ignites within him. What he doesn't expect is that this path will trigger a series of events that will change everything. Dude, Zeke had a dream, man. He wanted to reach the top of the martial arts, but obviously he knew it was a tough challenge. No matter how hard he tried, despair was what drove him to seek out an ancient legend that circulated among the people. This legend spoke of a golden fruit guarded by a dragon, like a super beast that lived in a cave. And after a fierce battle with the dragon, Zeke managed to get that fruit. He was amazed to see that the fruit actually existed and believed himself to be the true conqueror, sitting atop the dragon's body. Confident, he thought that by eating this fruit, he would become the master of martial arts, like the toughest guy of all, Gilfus, El Dragon. That was the name of the dude, the strongest RMC the world had ever seen. Decades later, Gilfus is at his deathbed, full of wrinkles and stories, surrounded by family. He sees his eldest son, Jillian, over at his side. Gilfus, noticing the boy is down, tells him to be strong and says it's his time. Guilherme, all sad, is about to lose his father, just like he lost his mother. As he is on the brink of death, Gilfus realized that the whole immortality fruit thing was just nonsense, but deep down, the guy found solace in having a wife and children to call his own. He told everyone that he lived well and has no regrets, but you know, that was a damn lie. Gilfus had a bitter taste of regret for not having more time to achieve his dream. Then the guy closed his eyes and prophetically opened them again. As if nothing had happened, shocked, he was wondering why everything felt so different around him. He realized he had a light body, and looking at his hands, saw they were baby hands. And wasn't he in a crib? As if someone had pulled a fast one on his life. The guy couldn't believe it, but tried to calm down, like by taking deep breaths. Since he was considered a 10-star in his past life, Gilfus thought his situation was quite out of the ordinary. Suddenly, he recognized that the fruit of immortality was not at all what it seemed. It was a reincarnation. This made the guy smile because, let's face it, it was a stroke of good luck to be seized. With this new chance, he believed he would finally reach the pinnacle of martial arts. Noticing other babies around, Gilfus suspected he had been reincarnated into the L-Dragon family, but then he got puzzled. What were all these babies doing in one room? At that moment, the maids entered with bottles in hand. They approached a crib and, took a goblin to feed it. Gilfus, who was already in shock, thought, what are they planning to do with that goblin? After filling the creature with the red liquid, it boom, exploded, spraying blood all over Gilfus. Panic took over, and he was trying to understand what was in the bottle. The maids, without wasting any time, decided to dilute the stuff even more and continued feeding it to the other babies. Euphos was soon grabbed by one of the maids, still trying to figure out this poison. He clearly saw that the contents of the bottle looked nothing like milk, but seemed to be overflowing with magic, like some really crazy stuff. The guy couldn't believe that the maids were giving something so sinister to the babies. One of the maids shoved the vial into his mouth and, after taking a gulp, Gilfus stopped everything and finally realized it was ancient dragon blood. He freaked out. They couldn't be so insane as to give dragon blood to babies. Finally, it became clear why they were diluting the stuff. He wanted to spit it out, but remembered that he had swallowed a little. But he thought a small amount wouldn't kill him, right? He saw the other babies were also spitting and decided that was the best course of action before he exploded too. Then suddenly, he realized he might be making a mistake. If he absorbed all that magical power, who knows? He might surpass his past self and achieve fame. Not quite understanding what was going on, but determined to make the most of the situation. He drank everything in the flask with a fierce look, like he was ready to show that no one should mess with him. Even the maid was stunned to see that Gilfos casually was consuming dragon blood. She was overjoyed that things were going well for her. When he finished drinking, he was placed back in the crib and saw that the other babies had also escaped this. Like a regular baby, he started to feel sleepy after such a meal. 7 years later, Zik was there doing push-ups while placing a stone on his feet just for training. He reached 1,000 push-ups, crazy. After pushing the stone, he looked like a mini Hulk. He gazed at that muscular body and admitted he loved this new life. Apparently, Gilfos was now going by the name Zeke Eldragon. Zeke believed that all the strength from the dragon blood he had consumed seemed to hold incredible power, and even the babies who had just a little were turning into monsters. Zeke managed to absorb every drop of the unique power of the ancient dragon, and things got serious. The boy underwent a transformation that left him locked in place, unsure if he believed what was happening, but suddenly he realized he was still a star warrior, which felt like a cold bucket of water in the face. A star is the true essence of someone's power compressed to the extreme, you know? Imagine his body as the universe where the stars dance this way and that, but not everyone excels in this dance. The catch is that the more stars there are, the greater the strength, and it gets even more intense. In his past life, Zeke reached a rank of 10 stars, earning him the title of the one and only. 7 years have passed since Zeke resurfaced as the son of the head of the Eldritch Dragon family, but as an illegitimate son. In other words, here's the deal. His mother had already kicked the bucket, and his father was nowhere to be seen, as if he were on eternal vacation. Zeke couldn't believe that his father was so insignificant, like stranger than a mother-in-law. Apparently, he reincarnated 1,000 years later, and the world turned into a curse where the weak are drained. There's even a spooky ritual called the Dragon Judgment, just for the babies who survive the innocuous blood. The kid was supposed to be trained as a dragon warrior, but he hasn't even received a single lesson, you know? He tries to ask a few questions to the maid, but she can only respond that she is not authorized to say anything. Zeke vents to the maid, reminding the girl that those who passed the test had to train. But no one is in the vibe. He only sees maids and where's the instructor. Things are looking rough. The maid acts like a doll, asking if he needs anything, but Zeke is self-sufficient and focused on getting strong. Zika even asks if she can spill some gossip about the other kids in the family, and guess what? Same response. He tries to manipulate the situation, but the maid, firm as a rock, doesn't say a word. Frustrated, Zeke wonders if that's all he can learn from her. He questions if she's there to be mistreated, and the maid defends herself, saying they were only sent to serve the king. Zeke realizes that the maid has about 3 stars, like she could have helped with the training, but nothing doing. He decides it's time to disappear into the woods and realizes he spent 3 years with the maid without any real connection. He waits for a response, but the maid just seems to be giving him the runaround, in a vibe of indifference. In the woods, Zeke starts eating a handful of poisonous herbs that taste like something even the devil would cry over, but he pretends everything is fine. Then he notices a strange shadow and wonders why someone would be following him without showing up. Who knows? But he ignores it and focuses on the path until he runs into an angry boar and the black mist of the guy who's chasing him, who has nothing to do with his past life. Zeke presents himself to the boar, and the creature charges at him as if it were the game of life. The boy smiles. It's skill showcase time because he assumes the stance and lands a blow to the boar's belly. The impact is mind-blowing, shattering everything and taking the boar down with a snap of his fingers. Zeke is in shock as he realizes that with a single touch, he, a 1-star fighter, has sent a boar to the ground. He concludes that the thing really is about the quality of the star, not just the number. He slings the boar over his shoulder and heads home feeling pretty proud. Meanwhile, he reflects that he's already tired of being alone and thinks about going on an adventure, but then he realizes the sea is the only place, even though he wishes he could travel elsewhere. Meanwhile, the strange figure watching him is shocked, like, how did he take down the boar without training? That's surreal. And moreover, the guy can't believe Zeke actually noticed him. He concludes that Zeke isn't a typical kid, considering that his mother died very young and his father is a ghost. The dude assumes Zeke must not have received a decent upbringing, but he can't escape this mess since he's the chief's son. He is under surveillance and things are getting more complicated. Sinister, the strange guy finds everything very interesting. He wants to see what comes next. Zeke returns home and realizes he has visitors, and that's not good. He can feel the strength of the visitors and wonders what they want with him, like he's not getting it at all. He walks to the door to see what's going on and notices they don't have any intention of killing him. Finally, he opens the door and sees some men in the living room already asking what they're doing there. He also notices that the men are wearing the dragon emblem L on their clothes, which is kind of a status. This makes him even more curious, and he wonders what's going on. In that moment, the men reveal that they came to fetch him because they need him to take an exam. Zay, who is about to lose his patience, thinks, man, nobody told me about any exam. Everything is a mess. Within minutes, Zay is being taken to the main house. He never imagined he would return after 1,000 years. What happened? He is dressed by men in a school uniform. It's all very confusing. Zay is taken to the main house not for luxury, but to attend the academy known as the Dragon's Nest. This academy belongs to the dragon family and is the dream of everyone born into the family. The deal is that everyone receives an education upon turning 7, and today is the admission exam. But our guy Zeke, poor thing, had no education at all, just chilling. He had no choice and had to face the exam since it's mandatory. That's why he was taken from the forest. Zeke was a bundle of frustration, and that made him tilt his head in pain as the other students walked by. Then a blue-haired kid named Langos came up to him. Langos, from the old scale village, asked if Zeke was okay or if he had a problem. Zeke turned around and, not very politely, asked what he wanted. Langos, quite shy, was just trying to help because he seemed concerned about him. Zeke was shocked by Langos' approach. He noticed Langos was timid but felt a strength coming from within the boy. So Zeke stood up and apologized for being rude. That led to the question about what the family leaders planned for him. Langos replied that the exam content was the same every year, but Zeke, clearing the air, told Langos he had no idea what the exam was about. Langos was shocked to see that the guy didn't know anything about the exam. He wondered if Zeke would be okay since he had no idea what lay ahead. Langos then decided to spend some time explaining things to our hero, but just as he was about to start, a bunch of bullies appeared and called Langos insignificant. In front of Zeke, he couldn't believe someone had the guts to insult him like that. The group was led by a guy named Retin, who was also from the village of Ko. Retin started mocking Langos, asking why he was there if he was so insignificant. Langos, not understanding the insult, replied that he was there for the test and took a shout from Retin. Retin said that Langos was trash and that he would never enter the academy. He even enjoyed making fun of Zeke, reminding him that his father was an imitation dragon. Zeke noticed that Langos was fuming, the kid with a clenched fist. Apparently, the El Dragon family had a strict hierarchy, led by a monarch. The newcomers were called lesser dragons and the common soldiers young dragons. The captains were considered adult dragons, and at the top were the elders, the elite, known as ancient dragons. But there was still a level at the bottom that was like trash, and those were the imitation dragons. Imitation dragons were those who didn't manage to enter the nest or didn't pass the academy. Langos wanted to prove that people like him were not fake. At that moment, Zeke decided to chime in and asked Retin how he knew Langos was trash if he hadn't even taken the test. Retin was shocked by Zeke's interruption and asked who he was. Zeke replied that he was just fine, but wanted to know why Retin believed Langos wouldn't enter. Retin shot back that Langos was weak. Zeke was shocked and quickly retorted that Langos was stronger than him and his gang of trash. The atmosphere heated up, and Retin questioned if Zeke was suggesting they were beneath someone like Langos. But before everything exploded, an examiner appeared announcing that the test was about to start. Retin, looking at Zeke, promised to remember his face with that same contempt as always. Zeke, surprised by the guy's anger, wondered why the kids were so explosive. Langos was also surprised to hear Zeke say that since they were all around the same age. Langos even commented that anyone would get irritated being called weak. Zeke asked if the exam was mandatory, but Langos explained that one could drop out if they felt unable, which shocked Zeke but only showed once again that he didn't know anything. Langos, realizing what was happening, suggested to Zeke that he should quit before getting hurt, but Zeke quickly warned that he had no intention of quitting. Langos was astonished by the chalky confidence of the Zeke, even without knowing what was happening in the exam. Suggested they hurry because the test was about to start. All the candidates were gathered. The examiner took his position to explain all the details of the exam. He said that all they needed to do was make a mark on the stone in front of them, but no weapons other than those provided by the examiners were permitted. To make things more interesting, they could use their bare hands, as long as they made a mark on the stone. The examiner revealed that everyone had 3 attempts, but Zeke didn't find this encouraging and was terrified. Zeke wondered what the surprise was, since they only needed to scratch the stone. He expected something crazy, like the test they had gone through, drinking dragon's blood, but what he was seeing left Zeke quite disappointed. The examiner signaled the start of the exam. The first candidate approached the rock and struck with all his might, breaking the sword and creating a deafening noise. Despite his immense strength, he failed to leave any mark on the rock. The boy collapsed to the ground in pain, and the examiners asked if he would use his 2 remaining attempts, but he was so beaten that he could only shake his head. They considered this a forfeiture and took the boy away. Zeke noticed that Langos was acting strangely and wondered why he cared, since the exam looked like a piece of cake. He decided to ask Langos about the rock. Langos revealed that the rock was called a regeneration stone and that it could repair any small scratch in an instant. It was also capable of reflecting the impact 100-fold if struck fiercely. Zeke concluded that the rock was something extraordinary. Langos mentioned that it was possible to obtain a scratch if the ethereal source power of the person was handled well. Zeke realized that the test was more about controlling that power than about the fighting skills of the participant. He glanced at the other candidates and thought that many of them had the potential to pass the exam. He also noticed that Redham and his friends were strong enough to handle the test. And where was he? He heard the candidates shattering one after another, trying to mark the rock. Moments later, the examiner called out number 315, which was Zeke's number. Jogos buzzed with worry and tried to convince Zeke to forfeit, but Zeke calmed him down, saying he was fine. Zeke stepped forward and, as soon as the examiner focused on him, felt a pressure and an aura coming from him. The examiner asked what weapon he was going to use, and he simply replies that he doesn't need any technique to use his hands. The examiner still asks if he doesn't want to use a weapon, and Zeke assures him that his fists are enough. The other students start laughing, saying there's no way he can make a scratch on the rock with just his fists. Even Langus is feeling uneasy, thinking that Zeke might come out of this without his arms. Langus begins to blame himself, wondering if he should have tried to stop Zeke from participating. Since Zeke has already made his decision, the examiner lets him proceed. Zeke examines the rock, realizing it's a mineral he has never seen before. He thinks that it must have formed 1,000 years ago. He also realizes there is still a lot he doesn't know, but decides to put that aside for later. Zeke gets excited, ready to punch the rock with all the power he can muster, hoping it will be enough to achieve what he wants with the stone. The technique he chooses is the Dragon Slayer's combat technique. A bright yellow aura appears around his body and arms as he lunges towards the rock. The impact shatters the top part of the rock into 1,000 pieces, making a huge noise and kicking up a cloud of dust. Everyone is in shock, but while the crowd closes their eyes, the examiner stands there looking as if this was just another day at work. Zeke lets out a sigh of relief, but soon realizes that the technique was a bit too heavy for him, especially at his age. He looks at his hand and notices he's bleeding, and his uniform is all torn. Instead of feeling proud for breaking the stone, Zeke concludes that he still needs to train more. The other students are like, how did he do that? Meanwhile, Ratem is facing his own trouble, largely because Zeke smashed the rock. Langus is agape, never imagining that Zeke would be the last guy to pass the exam. Even the examiner is in shock, thinking that only someone with 4 stars or more should have broken that stone. As Zeke is a legitimate son, the examiner questions whether he somehow inherited some power from his family. He realizes he has seen that technique somewhere else before. Zeke approaches the examiner and asks how he did. The examiner says he passed and hands him a bottle with a green liquid inside. Zeke asks about what's in the bottle, but Examiner Jr. just looks at him with hatred and tells him to step back. Zeke thinks the bottle is a reward for passing the test. He goes over to Langus, who praises the performance of the guy. Zeke takes the opportunity to ask about the bottle, and Langus explains that it's a healing potion. Zeke becomes confused, and Langos mentions that it is a common healing potion. Zeke takes a second look and thinks that the substance doesn't look like poison. He starts to believe that maybe this potion is actually an elixir. An elixir, as he remembers, is made from super rare materials mixed with herbs from hidden realms. Additionally, pure elixir cores from divine and ghostly beasts are included. Drinking an elixir heals wounds instantly and boosts the power of the one who takes it. Refining it is a challenge, as its ingredients are complicated to find. That's why it almost never appears. Zeke drinks the healing potion and, as expected, his ripped arms return to normal. Zeke is shocked and realizes that the potion is indeed an elixir. Langos has no idea what an elixir is, but thinks that these strange healing potions are much more efficient than those from the stores. Meanwhile, Zeke is in total shock because all his injuries vanished instantly. But then he realizes that there wasn't that explosion of power that always happens when he takes an elixir. Langos praises Zeke, saying that he is really impressive, but Zeke doesn't believe it. He glances at the bottle and thinks that it is just the best that humans have been able to create in 1,000 years. Langos reminds Zeke that he is quite strong, and Zeke already mentioned that he wants to be the strongest, so he is not surprised. Soon, Ree has his gang of bullies, and they play to take the test. And of course, they all pass. Zeke is not surprised at all because he was already sure they would pass. And finally, they call candidate 414, and who appears? Langos. As he comes down the stairs, Zeke notices that Langos is nervous and gives him that encouragement saying he'll be fine. Langos looks at Zeke and tells him to stop raising the bar so high. When Langos arrives at the test, he takes takes a sword, and Zeke wonders what strategy this is. Langos takes a deep breath and tries to strike the rock, but of course he doesn't make a scratch and even falls. The examiner, as always, says he still has 2 attempts. Langos gets up to try again, but the result is the same. He breaks down in tears, thinking if he's going to fail like the bullies said. As expected, Rei and his crew are already laughing at him, commenting that the half-dragon guy will always be just half. They even urge him to give up, reminding him that Zeke said that someone as weak as Langos is weaker than him. The Sadio Dukwais, examiner warns. Langos has one more attempt and asks if he wants to try again. Langos begins to stammer and falls into total darkness. Suddenly, Zake's voice appears in the darkness asking what Langos is doing. Langos is confused, and Zake suggests he use a spear instead of the sword. Langos is still processing this exchange, and Zake even says he is serious. Zake scolds Langos for using a weapon that is not meant for him, and tells him that no matter how many times he tries, he won't be able to hurt the stone with the sword. The friends start laughing at Zake, saying that Langos has always used a sword since he was little and has never picked up a spear. They, of course, think that Langos will always be the same loser, even if he changes weapons. Zake asks the examiner if he can switch weapons for the test. The examiner says there's no problem with that. Zake smiles at Langos and says he can use the spear without any issue. Zake gets into the motivational speaker vibe, asking if Langos is ready not to come out as a loser. But Langos is not. Langos gets up and announces that he will follow Zeke's suggestion and try using a spear. Langos' father never had the chance to enter the dragon's nest and was always mocked. Yet, he never gave up and always did his best for his son. For all that his father did, Langos is determined to prove it's not just pretend. He remembers Zeke saying that it will always end the same if he keeps using the sword. Langos hasn't known Zeke for very long, but he decides to believe in him. However, he has no idea how to use the spear, and Zeke just tells him to push straight. Zeke encourages him not to overthink it, just do it. Langos knows it's impossible for a spear novice to hit the stone and cause damage, but he will never know if he doesn't try. Even though he doesn't know Zeke well, he chooses to trust him because Zeke believes in him. Langos takes his position and feels that the energy of the ethereal source circulating in his body is different from what he felt with the sword. Langos goes all in and hits the stone. A massive shockwave makes his friends laugh, saying that there was no change despite the weapon switch, but up close they realize that Langos actually succeeded. They are left speechless, and even the examiner can't believe that Langos pierced the stone with the spear. Zeke is all proud and applauds Langos. Langos can't believe what he sees when the examiner notes that he passed the test. He asks again to confirm, but Zeke hugs him from behind, ensuring that it worked with tears and happiness. Langos embraces Zeke, and the friends can't believe Langos passed, thinking it was just luck. The examiner then shouts that the test is over and that now the entrance ceremony will begin. Zeke is surprised, not believing that scratching the stone was the only test they had to take. Langos warns Zeke that another exam might happen after they enter the academy. Zeke asks what he should do now that they passed, and Langos reveals that the heads of the dragon family will appear to congratulate the successful candidates. At that moment, a group of men looking like aura cultivators appears in the distance, heading towards the students. Among them, a guy ominously catches Zeke's attention, who asks Langos who he is. Langos is in shock, not believing that Zeke just offended the head of the family. Zeke doesn't hold back and calls the head ugly, but before he can finish, Langos covers his mouth. Langos is almost in a panic, begging Zeke not to speak, and despite all the difficulty in the world, Zeke decides to keep quiet. Zeke keeps an eye on the guys who are part of the Dragon Force. What's really impressive is that there are some strong guys, since most of them are level 6 stars. However, the boss of the Balza family, the dragon, is an 8-star warrior, a true monument. In his time, there were only a handful of 8-star individuals in the world, and Zeke wonders how many are left now. He then asks Langos how he feels. Langos makes it clear he can't stand Balza, and to top it off, he doesn't care whether the guy is his father or not. Then Balza steps forward with a breathtaking aura to speak to the students. He says a few words to the students, asking them to become the flesh and blood of Eldritch, but these words come with a weight as heavy as his aura, causing all the students, except Zeke, to start trembling. Langos even complains that it's hard to breathe, but Zeke feels nothing from Balza's presence. All he feels towards Balza is absurd hatred, even without knowing why. After addressing the students, Balza turns his back and leaves. Then, another elder steps forward, announcing that the head of the house expects great things from them. This guy also catches Zeke's attention, who begins to wonder who the elder with blonde hair is. Zeke notices that Balza's departure relieved some of the tension, but the crowd is still tense. The examiner, not wasting any time, steps forward. He reveals that they will announce the dormitory assignments, and Zeke almost falls off his chair thinking everyone is going to the same place. Langos, the helpful friend, decides to explain, since Zeke is completely lost. He clarifies that the academy has 4 dormitories and each one goes to one of them: east, west, north, and south. Momentarily, Zeke hears his name and gets up all excited to go. He tells his new friend to take care, and they exchange a few words before parting. Zeke is assigned to the east dormitory, and the boy nearly falls off his chair when he sees how much everything has changed in a millennium. He follows the note's instructions to find his room, worried that his roommate might be pissed off for him arriving late, all because he got lost. He finally reaches the door and, feeling all energized, opens it to introduce himself to his roommate, but the sparkle in his eyes instantly dims when he comes face to face with who his roommate is. Zeke can't believe his eyes. His roommate is none other than Langos, and he already feels an inexplicable connection with the boy. Langos in turn smiles and agrees, still commenting that he was feeling a bit lonely. Zeke then asks if Langos has any plans for the day, and the boy says no because training starts the next day and everyone was advised to rest. Zeke is totally out of the loop because he was completely disengaged during the briefing. He smiles as he admits this, but Langos thinks it's nothing to be proud of. Langos pretends none of this was said and suggests that they get some sleep, because tomorrow the training will be tough. It seems that initially Zeke considered dropping out of the school and embarking on an adventure, but the new experiences he witnessed since he arrived caught his attention. He decides to stay just a little longer to learn more about the world after 1,000 years away. A month later, the kids are undergoing intense training with the tutor. They are trying to master the dragon breath, which was created by Kinze, the house chief. The tutor explains that they need to master this technique to use in any situation. He moves around the group keeping an eye on the kids and notices that some are already doing well, one of them being Lika, the boss's little girl. It seems she is so sharp that she is classified as 1-2 star, but he is more interested in Zeke. While everyone is putting in effort to learn, Zeke is carrying a block of stone on his head. And holding 2 dumbbells with some stone blocks, the tutor begins to realize that Zeke has inherited the boss's power. However, he wonders how the kid is mastering all this without any teacher around. The teacher is in doubt, but reaches no conclusion. Meanwhile, Zeke reflects on how his breathing technique, the Dragon King's breath, was adapted and became the dragon's breath. He realizes that these techniques are methods of pulling mist from the air and channeling it into a person's body, increasing the mist. But the ideal level depends on the user's talent and creativity, which is why each noble house refines its own way and keeps the technique under lock and key. Zeke admits that the technique is straightforward and easy to learn, but he thinks it's totally useless if he can only use it while standing still. In reality, his technique allows him to use mist while moving. The effects of the technique are heavy, but only a few have inherited it due to the difficulty. Zeke simplified it back then so that everyone could use it and strengthen the clan, but he never imagined it would evolve and survive for another millennium, 1,000 years. Zeke is blown away by this and thinks there must be other martial techniques that have also changed over this time. After training, the kids head to the cafeteria to eat. While everyone is piling their plates with food, Zeke is there devouring everything easily. The protagonist notices that Langos looks like an exhausted zombie and encourages him to eat because he won't be able to run without energy. Langos, totally lost, has to ask Zeke how he manages to have so much energy while everyone else is dead. Zeke, with that smirk of someone who's the tough guy, mocks Langos, saying he's just weak. He even urges Langos to stuff himself with food and train like a man. While putting on this show, Zeke notices that some kids who think they are tough are devouring his food. Then out of nowhere, Laika appears, and Zeke, super curious and completely unashamed, asks who she is. Langos almost chokes on his food upon hearing this and rushes to whisper in Zeke's ear. He explains that Laika is the chief's daughter, and Zeke, knowing nothing, just comments that he was zoning out. Langos nearly explodes with frustration, whispering that they shouldn't even be chatting with Laika. Zeke looks at Langos with a face of someone who doesn't care and says that he is also the chief's son, even if he is the illegitimate one in the story. Langos and Laika are shocked, their jaws dropped, and Laika questions if he's serious. Zeke calmly replies that there's no reason to lie. Then Laika asks how he got strong enough to break a regeneration stone with just his hands. Laika is really interested, but Zeke just says it's because he's just a nice guy. Zeke notices Langos is in a trance and calls him back, telling him to eat. Laika approaches and asks if Zeke wants to join her. Zeke looks lost, and Laika, wanting him to become her lackey, asserts that she will be his supporter since he is an illegitimate son, and of course will want an ally. Laika wants Zeke to help her become the next boss, and promises a generous reward when she gets there. She says this in a sweet voice, but Zeke calmly responds that he's not interested. Upon hearing this, Laika thinks Zeke has ambitions of being the boss, and is therefore rejecting her. As Laika pours out her crazy ideas, Zeke looks at her and notices she's about to turn into a real star, something he admires for her age. Zeke finally says she's free to do what she wants, since he's not into family stuff. Laika is shocked and insists on asking what Zeke really wants. Zeke, irritated, drives the knife into the table, releasing a pressure that makes the table tremble, saying he doesn't want to serve anyone. Nobody. Zeke just wants to do his own thing because, obviously, he's the strong one in this situation. The pressure he emanates leaves Laika in total shock. She can't believe that Zake's aura is actually intimidating her. Zeke continues calmly chewing his food, while Langos tries to mediate the conflict. Suddenly, Laika loses her patience and attacks Zeke for a duel. Zeke, surprised but not backing down from a challenge, faces the situation. In moments, the gossip about the duel spreads among the students and everyone rushes to the field, while Langos is in a panic. Zeke acts like it's all normal. Langos tries to remind him he's going to fight Laika, but Zeke just replies that he has no idea who she is. He realizes Langos is also acting like he's about to die and asks what's going on. "Well, genius, that's because you're the chief's son," says Langos. Zeke asks what Langos wants from him. Langos tries to explain the situation. He warns that he wants Balsa's daughter and that he also has blood from the Typhona house, which is one of the factions supporting Eldrigan. Langos also says that Lisa is a genius because she masters all the fencing techniques of the Typhona house. Zeke is contemplating life, while Langos warns that he only knows she's Balsa's daughter, but isn't in the loop. Zeke starts to laugh, thinking that not knowing brings an adrenaline rush to the whole situation. He sees this as something thrilling, while Langos warns that he doesn't stand a chance against Laika. Langos questions why he accepted the challenge, and Zeke replies that it was obvious they expected that from him. Zeke focuses on Laika, thinking she's probably more ready for the fight. Laika then shouts at Zeke to stop babbling, with her sword planted in the ground like a true warrior, asking if he's ready to learn some manners with the adrenaline pumping. Langos leaves the arena to let the two face off. Langos shouts for Zeke to be careful as he runs away. Now that it's just the two of them, Zeke asks Laika what her deal is wanting to fight. Laika replies that she wants to be the head of the house, and for that, she needs to defeat Zeke and make him her subordinate. Zeke is shocked, thinking he has nothing to do with this. Laika is surprised that Zeke is so chill and asks if he doesn't know the truth about his family since he's an illegitimate son. Zeke was going to explain that he knew, but Laika interrupts. Laika says that including Zeke, there are 5 heirs competing for the spot of the next head, and Zeke is the only one without blood from one of the 4 great houses of Eldrigan. The main point is that any house that produces the head means they are all working hard to be the best in the academy and poking at each other. They only care about getting more allies. The explanation leaves Zeke completely confused, but he manages to grasp the idea. Laika makes a point that Zeke knows she's fighting to secure her place, and without wasting time, she charges at him. She is determined to defeat Zeke and tries to hit the crazy one with the sword, but the nutcase steps back. Suddenly, Zeke dodges the strike, but the sword's attack shatters the ground around them. Laika isn't going to give up that easily, and rises to attack Zeke again. She swings her sword frantically, pouring her power into the move. The spectators are impressed and praise her sword skills, even though it's just one of 3. As if she could hear the crowd cheering, she intensifies her attack on Zeke. But Zeke, as if he were a ninja, jumps all around the arena, evading all the blows. The crowd over there is impressed with Laika's strength. Since she's the chief's daughter, they bet that Laika will finish this fight quickly. However, Laika is getting irritated because all Zeke does is jump and dodge her attacks. Zeke is having fun, easily avoiding her punches and forcing the girl to try even harder. Zeke comments, praising Laika's speed and that her technique is really impressive. He adds that she is doing better than many common 1-star warriors. Laika, already full of rage, shouts at Zeke that he should fight instead of talking, as that's what Laika wants. Zeke decides to show a sample of his strength. Zeke calmly dodges one of her strikes and, in an instant, punches the girl right in the chest. The punch is so powerful that it sends a wave of pain through her body, making her spit blood. Laika falls to the ground on her knees, filled with pain, and the other students are in shock. In pain, Laika looks up and asks Zeka why she can't hit Laika, since she should be better than him. Zeke admits that she is faster than most, but reveals that she is still just a 1-star warrior. Laika retorts, reminding him that he is also a star. Zeke explains that he can read her movements because of her breathing, the tremor of her muscles, and even the movement of her eyes. Moreover, he has much more experience than she does. Zeke says this with an arrogance that only makes Laika rise again. She charges at Zeke once more, sword in hand, ready to show who's in charge. But even with this surprise attack, Zeke dodges with an acrobatic leap. This leaves Laika in a vulnerable position, and Zeke takes the opportunity to punch her straight into the wall. She slams against the wall, and a cloud of dust covers the entire area. The spectators are in shock, wondering if Laika has really lost. Langos gets all excited, runs back to the arena, and praises Zeke, saying how amazing he is. But Zeke responds to Langos that the fight is still heating up. Zeke is impressed that Laika is enduring the impact of the blow. As the dust settles, Laika appears to be struggling to get up, hurt, but she is not ready to give up. Langos tries to warn her to stop, as it could get worse for her. Zeke then tells Langos to back off because things are about to heat up and he won't be responsible for anything. Jack had already suspected, and now realizes that Lisa has reached 2 stars. Laika rises, surrounded by a shining aura. The crowd quickly notices that Laika now has 2 stars. The realm of 2 stars is one that allows for the true power of the source to be projected in martial arts. This projection is basically what they call an aura. Laika seems much stronger now and thanks Zeke for pushing her to reach 2 stars. Curious, she runs towards Zeke, ready to cut him into pieces. Her sword leaves a golden trail of aura, and Zeke admits that she has become stronger and faster. Joking with her, Zeke ends up underestimating her and receives a cut on his face. Laika realizes that Zeke is in shock and uses this to brag about being one of the 2 stars. She assures Zeke that he will face the true arts of the great sword of the Thunder Spirit. Zeke, excited, is eager to see something he has never seen before. He is dying to find out what Laika is preparing. Laika activates her Thunder Flash technique, striking Zeke before he can react, leaving him utterly shocked. Zeke admits that Laika is insane, but he sees no sign of regret in her as she is simply smiling. Annoyed, Laika activates another technique, hitting Zeke and making him realize he can't withstand the pressure. While he tries to understand his current state, the spectators are all losing their minds. They never thought a 1-star warrior could manage to confront Laika. Zeke notices that her movements haven't changed much, but the improvement to 2 stars has given her explosive power. Zeke has to admit that Laika is doing really well and is covered in lightning. Thus, it was impossible to see her 1,000 years ago. With the way Laika is moving, Zeke thinks of a counterattack, but wants to see all her power first. Meanwhile, Laika is furious, fed up, because Zeke is still there, smiling, even in the greatest trouble. She decides that she will take that confidence away from him no matter what. She charges at him with a technique so deadly and fast that Zeke can't even blink. Zeke just watches as the attack hits him and BAM! He is thrown against the wall, causing an explosion that leaves all the spectators with their hearts in their mouths. When the dust settles, there is Zeke standing, a smile on his face. This only irritates Laika more, and she charges at him again with another electric attack to try to bring him down. Zeke runs to try to stop this shit, asking Laika to stop, but she stomps her foot and says that Zay is there, firm and strong. She insists that she cannot stop, or else she will look like a loser. She keeps promising to be nicer to Zeke if he surrenders and promises loyalty to her, but Zeke just stays in his place, and it's clear that even though he's not a legitimate son, the pride of the dragon is within him. He decides he will give it his all to end this fight. She activates the great sword art of the Thunder Spirit and charges at him. Zeke freezes, unsure of where to run, and takes the full force of the attack. He screams in pain, being consumed by a mass of lightning. When the dust settles again, Zeke collapses on the ground, unconscious. Laika thrusts the sword into the ground, thinking the fight is over. To her surprise, she hears Zeke's voice behind her, saying that he finally understands how things work now. Laika turns around, and her surprise only grows. Zeke's body is now glowing, and he reveals that he can use electricity. Laika is in shock, thinking, "What the hell? How does this guy manage to use electricity?" Zeke is also surprised because he didn't even know what kind of being he was. He approaches Laika, filled with pride, saying that he actually had no idea how this happened, but he allowed himself to be hit on purpose to study Laika's power, and before he knew it, he was able to use this stuff. Even with this explanation, Lisa is confused, thinking that this doesn't seem possible. Zeke only knows that while she was attacking him, he was using the Dragon King's breath during the attack, and the lightning energy reacted to it. This made him accumulate lightning, and quickly he found himself controlling electricity. Zeke comments that he may not know everything, but that Laika has a unique body since the great sword art is a familiar technique. He brings up that perhaps her whole clan has the same constitution and learned a huge lesson, that the very source of power can bring life with electricity. Zeke then declares that it's all thanks to Laika that he has become 2 stars. With all this confidence, he realizes that the fight is not over yet. Laika, wanting to kill him, swings the sword, but Zeke just smiles and activates his electric powers. Zeke then jumps so fast that he loses track of where he is. With the source's power receiving this electric boost, his muscles and nerves are all stimulated, giving a green light for more strength. Zeke thinks this is a special advantage, and concludes that soon he will get used to it. Meanwhile, Lango only observes the chaos from afar, trying to understand what is happening. Being a Lango, he soon notices that Zeke is dodging Laika's attacks with the greatest ease. Laika is frustrated to the point of asking if Zeke is mocking her, but he isn't. He sees her as a real threat. Laika swings her sword, trying to catch him off guard, but Zeke dodges and decides that it's time to put an end to this. Zeke comments that to finish the battle, he will create a new technique and gets excited. Laika has an uneasy feeling and Zeke confirms that's right. He is going to invent a new technique. This shocks Laika, questioning whether Zeke has been trained in secret combat arts, but she can't imagine from where. Zeke realizes that she is completely lost and seizes the opportunity to advance at high speed, striking Laika with his new technique, dragon-killing arts, Thunderstorm, unleashing a surreal combination of lightning upon her. With that, Laika falls to her knees, and Zeke gives that little smirk, saying that the match is over. Laika is so done that she can't even stand and ends up glued to the floor. She drags herself towards her sword, unable to believe she has lost, wanting to surpass her brothers to become the leader of the house. While she berates herself, Zeke approaches, saying that, actually, she was a force of nature, putting up a good fight. Zeke mentions that he enjoys learning new things and doesn't see the time of the fight as wasted. With that big smile, he asks Laika if they will have another chance to fight. In reality, he wants to have another duel in the future, but for now, Laika is just horrified and in shock. A few hours later, Balza, Laika's father, is in a dungeon eliminating monsters as if they were ants, using only one of the combat arts, Dragon. He wipes out a horde of monsters as if he were eating popcorn. While doing this, a messenger enters with news about his daughter, the Yaoi Ai. Messenger informs that Laika has risen to 2 stars, but Balza couldn't care less. He tries to explain that this is a huge achievement for her age, and that she could reach 5 stars before graduating. Balza cuts him off, saying that talent is worthless if it is not used. He tells the messenger to come back only when he has more news about when she actually uses the new power. At that moment, the messenger informs Balza that Laika just lost a fight. And Balza deduces that she must have faced some dream, but the messenger reveals that it was none other than his son, Enlegit, who defeated Lika. Zeke Balza remembers Zeke mainly because of his mother. He acknowledges that Zeke's mother had talent, but he also knows that she had kicked the bucket long before the boy was born. This leaves Balza wondering how the kid managed to obtain the skills to defeat a 2-star. The messenger mentions that the cool part of the situation is that Zeke reached 2-star on his own. He didn't have anyone to give him that help, but he was strong and determined. Then Balza decides it's time to start the first test. The messenger is shocked and tries to warn Balza that it's too early, but Balza doesn't care. He states that death comes for everyone and only the strong deserve to survive. Balza declares that anyone who doesn't pass the first test is completely useless and doesn't deserve a future. The messenger has no choice and goes to carry out the boss's orders. Then Balza gives an even more shocking command, asking the messenger to summon Freya. He even asks again, and Balza confirms, commenting that he wants Freya to oversee the test, since Zeke is an interesting child. The messenger acknowledges the order and leaves, but soon Balza lets slip his excitement to see what Zeke has up his sleeve. Later, Zeke and the other students are in the training field following the teacher's instructions. However, Zeke is doing his own thing, carrying stones that weigh 5 times more than he does. He's focused on the breathing technique while the others are practicing the dragon's breath. This breathing technique is simple for him, and he hopes the kids can learn it too. Langos soon notices that Zeke's routine is different and asks if he doesn't want to train with them. Zeke, somewhat confused, doesn't understand what Langos is asking, and Langos mentions the dragon combat arts training. Zeke calmly states that he has already learned it, leaving Langos surprised. Langos contests that they had just taught that, and it can't be that he has mastered it already. So Zeke decides to give a few tips about his ether flow, and in a moment of imbalance, Zeke drops the stone he was carrying and turns to Langos. Langos complies, and Zeke hits him from behind, passing good ethereal energy. Zeke warns Langos that what he's feeling is the right channeling. Langos soon feels the difference and thanks Zeke for the help. That's when Langos realizes that Zeke really nailed it, but Zeke is pissed that Langos doubted him. Langos tries to clarify that he didn't understand Zeke. He mentions that he was never taught by anyone but his father, which is why he always had to put in the effort. However, Zeke already has enough strength to defeat Laika without any problem. Langos thinks the dragon's martial arts are just boring to Zeke, but Zeke replies that's not the case at all. Zeke comments that the stability of the technique is quite impressive. Basically, the dragon's martial arts were less valued by the kids, thinking they were super complicated, even though they are complex. It's a powerful fighting art that combines several forms of combat. Additionally, Zeke has just gained a new form thanks to his fight with Laika. The technique he used to defeat the dragon is the final form, and he is curious to see how it has been refined. So Zeke decides it's time to return to physical training because there's nothing more to learn from the dragon's martial arts. Suddenly, Langos makes a strange request and asks if Zeke could train him. Langos says he wants to become really strong, even if the mission is quite difficult. Surprisingly, Zeke is up for it because he sees Langos as someone who can learn. Langos is there celebrating his victory when a familiar voice emerges from behind, asking Zeke to train her as well. The voice belongs to Laika, and even though she seems shy, she can't help but acknowledge that Zeke is good enough to have beaten Laika. She says Zeke is a pro, and admits that her pride went out the window during the fight. Zeke is surprised by the unexpected request, and Laika adds that she also wants to be stronger to surpass her brothers and even Zeke. Laika sets aside her ego and asks Zeke to teach her to be stronger. Zeke takes a moment to respond, leaving Laika in a panic. Enjoy and comment on the next part in the comments. Also, don't forget to subscribe, activate the bell, and leave that like. Thanks for watching and see you next time.